Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be sharing with you 3 recipes for simple plant-based meals that I have been enjoying to lose weight on a plant-based diet. The first recipe is a lentil bolognese that I am going to be enjoying on spaghetti squash. So I'm just chopping up my spaghetti squash here and scooping out the seeds. I find that an ice cream scoop works great for scooping out the seeds, and it's much better to be scooping spaghetti squash seeds rather than ice cream. I'm popping my squash onto a baking sheet lined with a silicone mat and just giving it a few pricks with a fork, and then I'm throwing it in the oven at 375 degrees for about 35 minutes. Now I'm getting my lentils prepped up for the lentil bolognese. I'm cooking up a half a cup of green lentils here, just because that's all that I happen to have on hand. But you can always prep extra lentils and use them in other recipes throughout the week. But I'm doing half a cup here. I'm just getting some bouillon, better than bouillon, to throw in there to season the lentils. And I'm also going to be throwing in a couple bay leaves as well. Once you have these items mixed in, you can bring it up to a boil and then turn it down to a simmer. The lentils are going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook. And if you want to make your life even easier, you can always use a can of lentils in this recipe instead of making the lentils fresh. The next item to prepare is the mushrooms. I'm chopping up about half a pound of mushrooms here. I find it very relaxing to chop vegetables, but if you prefer, you can chop up your mushrooms in a food processor, and then that'll give you a nice ground beef-like texture as well. You can use any type of mushrooms here, or even a mix of mushrooms. I'm just using plain white button mushrooms because I can get them very cheaply at my local discount grocery store. So I've thrown those mushrooms in a non-stick pan, and I'm just adding a little bit of water to get them going. The next item to prepare is a carrot, which I'm just peeling and getting grated up. If you don't like carrots, you could put in grated zucchini. That would also work great here. Once your carrots are grated and the mushrooms are cooked down a bit, you can add those carrots to the frying pan with the mushrooms. And I'm just going to season everything with a little bit of salt and pepper. And you can add whatever herbs and spices you like. Oregano, parsley, Italian seasoning would all work great in here. Once the lentils are done, you can drain off most or all of the excess liquid. Now I'm adding about a half a jar of a store-bought pasta sauce to my frying pan. When you're choosing a pasta sauce, if you're trying to lose weight or maintain a healthy weight, I recommend looking for one that's low in fat and low in calories. I look for under 2 grams of fat per serving and under 50 to 60 calories per serving. You'd be surprised that some pasta sauces are just completely filled with oil. Now I've added the lentils to the pan, and I'm also adding about a cup of frozen spinach just to get some extra greens and nutrition. Now I'm mixing that in. Once it's all mixed in and both the sauce and the spinach is heated up, the pasta sauce is ready to go. So my spaghetti squash is done now. I've just pulled it out of the oven, and I like to flip them over and let them cool for a bit before I work with them any further. Once they've cooled a bit, you can fluff up the spaghetti squash flesh with a fork. And then just top it off with lots of the lentil bolognese. I like to really load it on. I'm going to finish it off with some freshly ground pepper, but some fresh parsley on there would also be nice if you happen to have that on hand. And that is my beautiful healthy supper. This next recipe is a fall-inspired rice salad that I enjoyed for lunch. I started it off by cooking up some frozen butternut squash. Obviously, squash is in season right now, so if you have fresh available, you could use that, and you could either saute up some diced butternut squash or use leftover squash that you happen to have prepared. Now I'm starting to prepare the dressing for this just in the bottom of the bowl. I just squeezed in the juice of a lemon there. And now I'm going to be adding a bit of a tahini. This is a personal sized portion for me, so I'm just adding 1 teaspoon of tahini. The next thing I'm adding is a splash of apple cider vinegar. And the last element to my dressing is a little bit of maple syrup to sweeten it up. Once that's in there, you can give it all a good stir, and then leave that until the other elements are prepared. The next thing that I prepared was some cabbage. I used cabbage because that's what I happen to have on hand, but kale or purple cabbage or shredded Brussels sprouts would all work really well in this salad. And you can use a food processor if you don't like chopping. Now that my cabbage is chopped, I'm adding that cabbage to the bowl with the dressing, and then I'm adding my other ingredients. So I'm using a cup of brown rice here, but if you happen to have wild rice or barley or farro cooked up, all of those would be great. Then I'm adding half a cup of white navy beans that I cooked up, but canned beans or lentils would also work great here. And the last ingredient that I'm adding there is a 1/4 cup of pomegranate seeds, which are in season where I am. If you couldn't find pomegranate seeds, dates or dried cranberries would work well in the salad as well. Now I'm giving the whole thing a very good toss. And that is my very simple, delicious salad. This third and final ingredient is a white bean hummus. These are the ingredients that you'll need. So I started with the juice of a lemon. I ended up using the juice of 1.5 lemons in this because it was a little bit dry, but we'll get to that later. Now I'm just roughly chopping up a garlic clove that I have peeled, but you can add more garlic if you really like garlic. The lemon's going in the food processor, and this is just a mini food processor that I have. The garlic's going in there as well. And now I'm adding about a tablespoon of tahini. This is an oil-free dressing, but it does have some fat in the tahini, so you can add more or less tahini as you prefer, depending on what your weight loss goals are. Once the tahini's in there, I'm adding about a cup of white beans. And once again, these are just beans that I'd had prepared in my fridge. They're navy beans, but you could use cannellini beans, pinto beans, or chickpeas, which would be traditional. I do find that chickpeas are a bit drier, so you often need to add more liquid when you're using chickpeas. The spices that I'm adding here are cumin and paprika, and I added about half a teaspoon of each. So you may need to scrape down the edges and add some additional liquid, as I had to do. So I went ahead and added another half of a lemon, but you could use water if you don't want to add the extra lemon, or you could use oil if you're not trying to lose weight and reduce the oil and fat in your diet. So that is it for this hummus recipe. I gave it a final taste just to make sure that all of the flavors were great. And that's all for today. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again on my next video.